This is Fam Electric Ghost doing live on the air for the first time with Chad Hufford, mindset and performance psychology investing coach. And welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast.
Phantom, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to let people know we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. You see the listen on Newsly icon up there and a coupon code. If you use that, you get 1 month free premium subscription. We are a featured podcast on that platform. That's an audio only platform, and we'll be on there later tonight. So thank you again for being on the show. We're at episode 971 of the Fam Electric Ghost podcast with this episode, and we'll bring back your link there. And that's www.veritasalaska.com. For those of you just listening, that will be clickable when we're fully published. And if people click on that URL, what do they find there?
So that is our main homepage. That is our website where we offer our investment management, financial coaching, financial planning, and it's where my team lives, so to speak, on the web.
Oh, great. That's awesome. So we want to encourage people to make sure you click through on that. And in this episode, what we're going to talk about is choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. So maybe, I don't know if you want to start with that topic or maybe give people your background.
Well, I'm excited to be here and share some of my experiences in helping people live a more abundant life. And I believe that investments, money is just a tool to do that. It's a tool that we leverage, but ultimately, the goal we're after is living with more freedom and abundance. And I think a lot of folks, Phantom, are living in a mindset of scarcity. And scarcity doesn't have to be your current circumstances. I've talked to multimillionaires who still live in a place of scarcity. They're worried about losing what they have. And it could be their health, could be their money, could be their relationships, but money doesn't fix your problems. In fact, a lot of times money just makes you more of who you already are. It magnifies character qualities, good. So if you're a generous person, more money will make you more generous. But if you are somebody who is scared, if you are if you are somebody who feels like everybody's out to get you, you're pessimistic, money will probably make you more paranoid and pessimistic. So we are really excited to share. I'm excited to share some of what I've learned along the way to help people look and think about not just money, but life differently, habits, goals, and
Yeah.
this idea of choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. It really, Phantom, it goes down to the basic building blocks of habits. And the problem with habits, the hard part about habits is good habits, healthy habits typically have their cost up front and their benefit in the long run. Bad habits, unhealthy habits typically give us a momentary sense of pleasure or relief, but the consequences, the cost of those habits are long-term and long-lasting. But that's what makes it so hard to build good habits, is that there's sometimes a temporary pain, discomfort, a cost. And and if I go eat a bowl of ice cream, there's temporary pleasure there. I don't have to pay anything up front. In fact, I'm getting this dopamine release. I'm getting my taste buds all excited. But just to put this in perspective, it takes running about 3.5 miles.
Get rid of that.
One scoop of ice cream. One scoop of ice cream takes about 3.5 miles of running. So you think about that takes a lot longer than eating that scoop of ice cream. But typically habits and choices are like this. So one of the questions we like to ask people is, when it comes to your future self, are you serving your future self or are you stealing from your future self? And a lot of choices we can boil down to one of those two categories, but many times it starts with choosing the hard right over the easy wrong.
Well, I think the problem today, like if you look at things today, I'm a child of the 70s. I just turned 56. And in a world where people, have like these 30-second reels and instant gratification and fast food and everything has to be, done quickly. And then people look at, well, this person got 1 million views, but are they doing something positive? Right? If you're doing something, is 1 million views of like tripping somebody and seeing them fall down gets 1 million views, and then all the teenagers think that's good. then they go trip all their friends. Is that really a positive thing? Right. Just because you get a million views doesn't mean it's good. Just because you have a tool that can do something, a hacker could go and put a worm in your system. Just because they have it does that mean it's good? See, I think that's the problem. People look at things and they just, oh, I can use this for instant gratification, and they don't do the hard work. In the music industry today, like I write a lot of things on original equipment. I'm a synthesist. I have keyboards. I play. There's a lot of things where you can go. You could use AI. You could sample. You could clone. You can take somebody else's work, and that's a quick hit. But is that really what it's about? Are you expressing yourself, or just trying to get the quickest way to get the money or the popularity? So I think people have to think about the things they do. Just because you can do it doesn't actually mean that's actually the most positive thing for you.
Absolutely. Just because you can do something certainly does not mean necessarily you should do something. And to your point, I think people need to ask themselves, do I want immediate gratification, or am I after long-term impact, long-term significance? And a lot of times those two choices are mutually exclusive.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of times in podcasting, people tell me that most podcasts go 6 to 12 episodes, then they give up because they don't
Mm.
hit the number they thought they were going to hit. So that kind of puts me in a weird situation at like 971. Like, you know, how did I do that? Well, because I do it because I like it. I didn't do it because I wanted to get X or Y or Z. And then things happen because I actually put myself out here, and then other things happen. I'm a musician. Why am I podcasting? Because I get opportunities. That's kind of like it's my pitch. It gets me out there. I get other people that come to me and say, "Oh, I want you to do a soundtrack. I want you to do this. I want you to do that." And it's just I get this big Rolodex because I put myself out here. And it's not necessarily something you would expect or could have planned on, but because you're consistent and you're there, you get unforeseen opportunities. And sometimes things are not readily apparent. Like you said, it's a long-term effort.
Life is a long-term goal, and you're absolutely right, Phantom. I agree with you 100%. And I wish more people looked at life as a farmer would look at his fields. And not every seed you plant is going to grow, but you're going to relentlessly go out there and plant those seeds, and then you're going to wait patiently. A farmer doesn't plant a seed and expect the next day he's going to have this huge crop. It takes time. You have to plant those seeds, you have to nurture them, you have to water them, and it takes patience. We have this microwave society. We want to plant our seeds in the ground, push a button, and then reap the
Yeah,
benefits right away.
yeah, they're
Life
mature right
doesn't
there.
work that way.
Yeah, they want you want to accelerate. And then if you go and do something where you accelerate the growth of a plant, do you actually get the full benefit if you kind of skip steps? Like if you go, like they went and changed tomatoes to make them harder so they wouldn't
Mhm.
get bruised. But do they taste as good as something that wasn't done that way? That's more like if you go and check the old school older varieties that are not as well, don't do well with packaging, right? They actually taste better. So there's a lot of things we do for convenience that actually take away nutritional value, take away all kinds of things just because, oh, you don't want it to get bruised. But they are what are you doing to the actual product?
No, there's always trade-offs, and there was a very famous economist who said, "There's no such thing as solutions in life, just trade-offs." And when we're making decisions, we have to understand: Are we making the right trade-offs? Are we sacrificing what we really want or need in the long term for something that we just desire in the short term? Whether that's a shortcut, or we're speeding up, or we're making a compromise to make something easier or faster that really harms us when we look at 10, 20, 30 years down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think creating good habits, a healthier mindset. I'm a cancer survivor.
Mm.
When I was 27, I had a level 3 sarcoma. It was a big change in my life. I had to learn a lot of things. I had to unlearn a lot of things. Yeah, I had to not don't smoke, don't drink alcohol, don't do certain things. Like, and I can't go out in the sun that much. I
Mhm.
kind of had to change a bunch of things because I'm in that post-cancer situation. So I kind of stayed pretty clear on what I needed to do. And I knew some people that when I had cancer and they had cancer, they kept on smoking, kept on drinking, kept on doing it, and they're not here because they couldn't stop. Right. And it's like there's certain things you have to give up to have longevity. And like you have that, oh, I want that smoke, I want that drink, I want that whatever. But if it's like that instant gratification, but it won't keep you here. Right. So it's like is it better to be here longer and enjoy it, or does it get burn out because like, oh, I want to do what I want? You have to make that choice.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our habits, the choices and behaviors that we make every single day. And just like that farmer that we talked about at the beginning, you can't plant bad seeds and expect a great crop. You can't expect great fruit coming from disease, decayed, uh, unhealthy seeds. And we do
Yeah.
that all the time in our life where we plant poor habits in our life and expect different results, or we keep doing the same things and expect a different result. We keep planting apple seeds and expect to grow orange trees. And in order to change the outcome, the trajectory of our life, we have to change behaviors. And it starts with sometimes paying a price. A lot of times we have to be able to sacrifice who we are now to become the person that we were designed to be. And that's a very,
Hmm.
very difficult sacrifice. But it's something that people have to be mindful of and really weigh the costs. Like, is this thing I'm trying to accomplish? Is it meaningful enough for me to pay the price? Whether that is physically, emotionally, psychologically, monetarily. Am I willing to do this thing right now that's hard, that's difficult, that's scary in order to accomplish what I say I want to do? Because a lot of times the life that we want is on the other side of that door of difficulty.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of fear. I would say like pre-cancer, I had a fear of public speaking. I had a fear of being in front. I'm a keyboardist. I was in bands. I was always in the
Mm.
back. Yeah, I would have never done what I do now. Being a podcast host or being in the front or singing my own songs, that's not what I was about. But what I started to look at was if I could survive that cancer, I could look at my fears and say, well, why am I fearful of that? I actually went and lived in Japan for 2 years and I had been fearful of traveling. I started to look at the things where I was putting ceilings on myself. And a lot of it was like fear. There's a lot of fear that people don't, you could be doing something that's very codependent or very like bad for you, but you are comfortable with that repetition. You're comfortable with it to a certain degree until you hit the like max breaking point, and then you're like, well, how come I'm not progressing? Well, because you're not handling those fears. You're not trying to figure out like if you have mistakes, but you can either keep on repeating them or you can learn from them. Do a lesson learn. And it's not bad to make a mistake when you're trying something new. It's just bad if you keep on repeating it. The thing that keeps on, if you can figure out how to learn from it and then progress, as a songwriter, we do it all the time. We get 99 versions of a song. 100th version is the one that we, choose to use. But each one of those is a step on the rung. It's not necessarily a failure. It's a step to get where we want to go.
Phantom, I think the only difference between an experiment and a failure is your willingness to learn from it. And that doesn't mean you to go into situations willy-nilly with no preparation, with no planning, but it means at some point you just have to step into the unknown. And a lot of times we wait for that feeling of fear to leave or subside. And as you know, you have to step through it. It doesn't necessarily leave until you've already stepped through it. You have to go through those feelings of failure, and only then do they start to subside. But to your point, when you're a musician, when you're an artist, when you're a speaker, when you're doing life, you're not going to get it all right and perfect the first time. You have to be willing to be rubbish at first, and but not quit. If nobody shows up to a gig, you don't stop, you don't quit, you don't do two, three, four podcasts, nobody listens, and you quit. You have to keep iterating, keep learning. Like,
Go.
what did I do well that I can improve on? What did I do poorly that I need to change? What do I need to be thinking about differently? But it's learning from those setbacks. And that what it does is it changes the setback to to an experiment and an experience, and we don't have to look at it as failure anymore. So I have a degree in biochemistry, and it was all day. It was doing experiments. And a lot of times those experiments did not end up the way that we had planned. And again, we went into it with a lot of planning, a lot of preparation. We didn't go into it without an objective. We went to it very
Mhm.
strategically, but we also knew there's a high likelihood that this was not going to play out the way that we had hoped, the way that we intended. And we were more focused on learning from the experience than we were from the outcome. And if people can still plan and prepare, but detach themselves from the outcome and really learn from the process, I think we would experience fear and failure a lot differently.
Yeah, I mean, what I like to do with a lot of what I do is I do stream of consciousness, and in terms of way I write. And so what happens is there's a lot of happy accidents. And I've talked to a lot of creators, between actors, poets, photographers, a lot of creative people. And when you're in this kind of flow state and you start to trust yourself, and if you just kind of let it flow, like as a musician, I just put my multi-track on and I start playing my piano. I could have structured a song on the bars, but if I am willing to just kind of experiment and go with what's in my heart and kind of like
Mm.
feel the muse and like and trust the fact that you've been playing for 20 years, they're gonna figure something out. It's gonna come out. If you actually put that down, you'll actually explore something that's this kind of weird flow state where it ends up being a lot of time. Like I would say most of the time when I write, if when I go write without having a total intention of what I want to do, but allowing myself to trust my capabilities and just go into that flow state, most of that work is better than the stuff I planned out as a creative. Now, I'm a software developer and I have to do software design. But even in software design, we have happy accidents. And what we end up doing is that you have to learn to see the opportunity that you are doing X. You found Y, but Y actually ends up being $1 million thing. If you're
Mm.
so hung up on X, you won't even see that Y was $1 million thing because you say, well, I just want to do X. You have to be willing to kind of be able to take that happy accident and go with it if it happens.
Phantom, have you read the book War of Art by Stephen Pressfield?
I haven't read that, but I can check it out.
Okay. Okay, it takes about an hour to read it. It's a super short book, incredibly impactful. One of the more impactful books that I've read, War of Art. It's written for artists, but it could be anybody in a creative space or an entrepreneur. It could be a parent, anybody who has resistance and fear holding them back. And this idea is exactly what you said. It's to just put yourself out there and start executing. And I love what you said about the flow state because it's so important. Uh, you look at kids, like there's natural creativity in each one of us, but whether it is fear or society, whatever it is, but creativity often gets beaten out of us as we get older. You
And
think of
push
kids
down.
like they're singing, they're playing, they're writing, they're doing all kinds of things, and they don't worry about. They haven't developed that voice inside of them that says you're not good enough, you're not experienced, no one wants to listen to you. And I think as we get older, we choke out those ideas with practicality and pragmatism before they even get fully formed. Maybe we're a songwriter or an author. I'm in the middle of writing a book right now. And there's times where I'm writing, I'm like, that's not the right way to word it. And it's like, no, no, no. I just need to get the idea out there. Just
Mhm.
like you said,
Flow
get into the
state.
flow, start putting things out there. You go back and clean this up later. But we have
Yeah.
those little voices that saying, nope, you need to nope, people aren't going to want that. Nope, you're not, nope, you spelled that word wrong. And we're so worried about not doing the wrong thing that we forget
Yeah.
to go after the right thing.
But sometimes perfection is the enemy of artistry. I've actually really believed that because I'm a big fan of like fusion jazz or experimental jazz. And there was a good example I like to give is Herbie Hancock was playing with Miles Davis. Herbie
Mm,
Hancock did a bad chord in the middle of like the wrong chord. And Miles actually changed how he was playing and actually changed his playing to match what Herbie played. And then after the
mm.
gig, Herbie was apologizing to Miles, and Miles said, "No, you don't need to apologize. This is how we write. This is how I got from bebop to fusion." because you got to be willing to kind of go with something when it happens. You helped me write a new song. We're writing a new song. Instead of looking at that as a bad thing, he kind of showed them that there was like no bad note as long as you know how to recover in real time. And a lot of musicians that play live, we have the ability to kind of, we don't stop the whole gig. We're able to recover from hitting the wrong key and act like we didn't because we just flow with it and we kind of know how to, like, okay, I'll adjust. And if you can learn how to adjust to life when something unexpected happens, that gives you a better capability instead of stressing about, oh, I didn't do it like A, B, C. Like when you need to do X, Y, Z. you know?
Well, and what it does is it restores a sense of agency because you're right. We can't control everything that happens to us. You can't control the fact that you got cancer, but you could control how you responded to that. And you change your habits. You made choices. I'm guessing you live life more intentionally. So you couldn't control everything around you, but
Mhm.
you can control how you respond. And by responding positively to what a lot of people look at as a tragic situation, or in the case of what you're talking about, a missed note, you can respond in a positive manner that takes something that could be very, very negative and turn it into something beautiful. The only difference, it isn't the event, it isn't the circumstance, it's how you responded to it.
Yeah, it's your mindset. Like it's like the half, half empty, half full. Like if you look at it, and I've seen, a lot of people that have all this work, whether they're a painter, a poet, and then they don't want to show people. And usually, what they don't want to show is the most impactful thing they've ever done. But they're so worried about it being perfect or what other people are going to think that they stop themselves. And there's a lot of people who are artists that you'd be surprised how many times they actually stop themselves because they want to make money or they want to be popular
Mm.
or they think the fans want X. And then when you once in a while you get a guy like a Bowie, you get like a Hendrix, you get somebody that, that actually says, you know what, I could be Ziggy Stardust forever, but I decided to get rid of that persona and start from scratch. And the artists like that are hard to come by because a lot of people just want to repeat what they is successful because that's what the industry wants you to do. They
Yep.
usually don't want you to do what Bowie did or do what Hendrix did. They don't want you to try something totally different and break up the band and actually go into something totally outrageous. Why are you doing that? That was working. Who cares if it was working? That's not where my head's at.
Mm.
And a lot of people get forced into doing something they don't even want to do. And I think that's what in life is like, are you doing that 40-hour a week day job because of expectations of what you think you want? And it's not, you're sitting there and you don't want it. Like, I don't want this. I want to be an entrepreneur. Or I want to go and do this. I want to do something totally different. But they're afraid to make that change. And they really need to make the change. And I think that's where the problem is, where people don't know, the pain involved. There's going to be a pain. It might be a loss of income, might be a loss of respect, loss of friends, or whatever. You got to be willing to kind of go burn through it, work through it. Some people might drop off. You might get new people. You have to be willing to, take that change head on because it's going to cause impacts.
And it goes back to, are you serving your future self or stealing from your future self? And in this case, it's more of what you're talking about is integrity. Like, am I being true to my own desires? And I think too often in life, we chase what we think is important to other people, not what is really deeply meaningful to us. But I want to go back to what you said just about perfection, because I think that gets people caught up. Tripped up, I should say, a lot of times too. And I think it falls into kind of two different camps. In one side, perfection keeps a lot of people from even starting. And it
Hmm.
doesn't matter if you're a musician or an artist. It could be simple as somebody who they want to get in better shape. And they're worried about, well, I got to have the perfect diet. I've got to have the perfect workout routine. I've got to have the perfect whatever. Or somebody who's trying to start a business. They want that perfect idea, the perfect business plan. In investing, people looking for the perfect investment strategy. I got to tell you, as professional investment manager, it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as perfect. Investments are volatile. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's scary sometimes. And a lot of times we let perfect become the enemy of done. And people are waiting for perfect to come along. And it doesn't. Perfect doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. We have to take good and execute it relentlessly. And good can get better over time, but it won't unless we get started.
Hmm.
And the other side of that too is people who maybe do start, but they're so afraid of perfection, or they're so consumed with perfection, that what they do is unsustainable. They're
Hmm.
booking too many gigs, or they're practicing in a manner that is too intense. It's too time consuming. And I mean, it's all people
Yeah.
all about, you gotta make sacrifices, you gotta work all that, but it has to be sustainable. You're better off if you're trying to be a better musician. You're better off practicing an hour a day if you can sustain that for the rest of your life, than practicing for 4 hours a day and you quit after a week. And
Yeah.
look at going to the gym. January 2nd, 3rd, 4th, the gym is packed with people. You go in there on like Valentine's Day, 6 weeks later, it's empty, because you get people that
Yeah.
sign up. They're all excited. They're like, yeah, I'm going to get this. This is going to be the best year of my life. A new and better me. I'm going to lose all this weight. I'm going to get in shape, rock hard abs, all this stuff. And they're looking for these workouts on the internet. Like, oh, this is what the Navy SEALs are doing. I should probably be doing that. They work out for like 3 days. They're miserable and they quit. So we don't have to, we need to worry about sustainability over optimal, especially when we're talking about making hard choices,
Hmm.
doing the hard right over the easy wrong. It isn't just doing it once. It isn't just doing it twice. The people who are successful in anything, music, business, investing, relationships, they do consistently what most people do occasionally.
Yeah.
And it isn't what you do once. It's what you can commit to doing every single day for a long time. That's what separates people from the rest of the pack.
Yeah. What I find, like I got a three-tier experience. Like I'm a software developer since 93, right? And I've been working since 93 and I continue to work in that space. I've been a podcaster since 2016. Everybody says you end, most podcasters fail after 12 episodes. I'm at 971, head toward 1,000. And in terms of music, I've done about, probably created about 70 records, 70 albums since I've been doing my music. Nobody really, I'm not that big, but I'm very consistent. And I've had Grammy award winning producers actually talk to me and like what I do. So I'm kind of like people know who I am in the industry I'm in, and they
Mm.
kind of understand where my head's at. But I'm kind of more of an experimental person. But I like that credibility. To me, that's actually that having a Grammy award winning producer say they like my work. That was like telling me I was going the right way.
Mhm.
Because that was like I respected who they were and I understood the kind of work they did. And for them to like my stuff, that was like, that was they say, okay. But whether or not I was gonna get that, I was still gonna do it because I love it. So that's the other thing. Like, do you do what you do because you love it and you have a passion? Or you do it because you're trying to meet some expectation to show somebody else or something that's not realistic and you haven't really thought it through. I think a lot of people like, they look at that person with the rock hard, the six pack abs, and then they realize they're not going to get to it. Right. And they say, was that realistic for what you want to do? Do you just want to be healthy? Doesn't mean you have to have the six pack. Maybe you just need to have a certain level of fitness that's sustainable for what you could do versus what trying to compare yourself to somebody else. I think that's the problem. People try to compare themselves to an Adonis. It's like you're not probably gonna be Adonis. you know, it's like, are you? It's probably not.
Well, and it's so hard today because you can compare yourself to anybody with all these different social media platforms. I know we're using some right now, so it's nothing against social media, but we can compare our lives to anybody. And and what happens is, yeah, we compare what we have to what is important to somebody else. So for somebody else, rock hard abs might be super important. A BMW might be super important. Beach vacations might be super important. But when we have all that stuff to compare us to, it's easy to pull us. It makes it very easy to pull us off our path, and we start dancing to somebody else's music, not our own. And like we talked about a few minutes ago, we lose that integrity with ourselves. We start doing things outside of our true nature, and we do things based on what we think is important to other people, what maybe will impress other people. And I see this all the time where people, they spend money they don't have to buy things they don't need to impress people they don't even like. And it's just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
But their life just gets out of alignment. And like you said, it can happen in fitness, it can happen in music, it can happen in anywhere. But it's getting really clear about what is true to me, like what is deeply meaningful that I can pursue and is worth sacrificing for.
It's kind of like the law of attraction. I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Nichiren Daishonin Buddhist, a Japanese form of Buddhism. And the idea is like the law of cause and effect. And the idea, kind of simplified, is if you put out negative energy, then you get back negative energy. You put out positive energy, positive energy comes back. So if you have negative thoughts, very pessimistic thoughts, all these bad things, like it's like, September is like the 13th of Friday 13th all the time, right? But if you have very optimistic outlook, and then if you're not prickly and agitated and aggravated, then people will come to you. Things will start to come to you because you have a positive outlook. It's like putting sugar, in honey versus like vinegar and sulfur. Is like, are there people going to come to you with the vinegar and sulfur? Or are they going to come to you with the honey and the sugar? Like if you have a better outlook on life, not that you want to be fake, but you actually start to believe in positivity. And it's not that you
And
have to be kind of grinning fake in a fake way, but it actually have a real belief that's true, or true to your own mindset.
well, and yeah, no, nobody wants to hang out with somebody whose spiritual animal is Eeyore. Then, and for those of you that don't know, it's
Winnie the
Winnie the
Pooh.
Pooh character. He's like carrying around his own little personal rain cloud with him, and it's woe is me, and everything is always going bad. But it's kind of what we talked about earlier. You reap what you sow. If you're sowing bad seeds, you're gonna reap bad fruit. But there's also a lot of scientific evidence behind this. So there's a part of the brain called the reticular activating system. And the reticular activating system, the RAS, it basically is a filtration system because there's so much information that our eyes and ears and our senses are taking in all the time. It has to filter that. It's like a gatekeeper that says, well, this is important, this is not. And you train your RAS, your reticular activating system, to notice certain things and ignore others. So if you're the type of person who focuses on bad news. You wake up your phone, you're looking, oh my gosh, here's all the horrible things that happened in the world while I was asleep. And you think people are out to get you. Your reticular activating system will find things to reinforce that. It will remind you of all the time somebody was out to get you or somebody did say something bad behind your back. And that's what you will notice because you've trained yourself to think that those things are important. And, going back to the Eeyore thing, it's like that we know people, we both do. I'm sure, Phantom, who, you can look at this beautiful blue sky and they're going to find the one cloud like way off in the distance, like, oh, it's cloudy over there, because they've trained themselves to look at the negative. So one of the things I've done personally to combat that, because I'm in an industry, the finance industry is extremely negative. It's very, very fear based. It's
Yeah.
very, very um, caustic and toxic. Anyway, um, every morning I start my day. One of the first things I do is I write down 3 things I'm grateful for, because what it does is it starts training my body to look for those things. And sometimes it's super simple. Like the other
Mhm.
day, I was almost out the door and I usually pack up my clothes, my gym stuff like the night before. And I just happened to look inside my another vehicle, because I was like, I wonder if I put my shoes in my gym bag. And sure enough, they weren't where they were supposed to be. I'm like, I was so grateful because I was about to go to work in my gym shoes, And it's just a small, silly little example,
It's
but those
small,
little
small
things,
things.
like, you know what? Like that would have affected the rest of my day. I would have been in sweaty, stinky shoes the whole day because I wouldn't have had my work shoes in my gym bag. And it's just like those little tiny things. It could be as simple as, I'm thankful for electricity today. I'm in Alaska. I'm thankful for heated seats in my car. I'm thankful for heated floors and a good heating system, like little basic things. But
Yeah.
There's a saying that says fish discover water last. And I and the meaning of that is when you're surrounded by something, you tend to look past
There you
it, you
go.
overlook it.
Yeah.
And we have so many blessings around us. I'm not saying that people don't go through difficult things, but we are
Mhm.
surrounded by abundance. But if we don't notice it, we'll still live in scarcity. And if we can train ourselves to actually experience and notice abundance, we will live a more abundant life, even if our circumstances don't change, because we're choosing to focus on those things that are going right rather than worrying about everything that's going wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it as a creative person, what I like to do is take the negative things or the things that were concerning me and turn it into art. And a lot of us as
Mm,
artists, we use it as a very cathartic process. It's art kind of like art therapy. So the act of actually creating a piece of art is usually because in that flow state, you're actually taking things that impacted you, maybe made you sad, maybe made you happy, but it usually is something that affected you emotionally and learning how to craft that into a piece, some art. And a lot of times I've worked with therapists that are really big on art therapy or journaling or getting people to really start to analyze what they're doing. And as an artist, we kind of analyze it and turn it into something. I think a lot of people don't take the fact that when you're doing those lessons learned in your life, you don't be all just pessimistic about it. Like, a lot of times I learned a lesson surviving cancer. And then it was like every day I was waking up, I was grateful I was waking up. It gives me an opportunity. You kind of just have to give people this idea. Every day that you wake up, you can achieve something you didn't expect. And if you just think the whole everything's terrible, then you're totally not looking at like the water. Because every day as a human being, you have the power, a lot of power to do things. And it's just that your limiting beliefs are preventing you from actualizing. And I believe a lot of people, once they realize what they can do, like I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of creative people on this podcast, is when they get to that point where they realize they can be in that flow state and they actually can do a business, be an entrepreneur, be a life coach, what they can actually do something. Where before they had limiting beliefs and they couldn't do it because they were stopping themselves. And I think that's where people need to kind of, you live in this world, you hear all these bad headlines, you don't have to like focus on that. I was telling my best friend about that. I was like, he has a Les Paul. I was like, why don't you pick up your
mm.
Les Paul and stop watching the news and just go to your Marshalls and start jamming out and just get happy about that. And then you'll think less about what's on the news and then actually get maybe you'll create something that's cool instead of thinking about and being depressed and not wanting to get out of bed.
Turning off the news is almost always a good idea. I don't think anybody ever had a breakthrough in life by watching the news. And I think you're right. I think so much of our world designed to stifle creativity. Even our school systems are designed to reward conformity more than creativity. And we've learned to kind of iron the wrinkles out of our lives, but it's the wrinkles that give us texture and meaning. And you and I are both blessed to have survived near death experiences. And doesn't maybe see it surely didn't seem like a blessing at a time for either one of us, but to be able to look at life, to wake up every morning and to see life as a gift changes our outlook on how we live out our days. If we look at life as a gift, and I believe life is a gift from God, and my gift back to God is how I live that life, it raises the stakes. It changes how I experience the things that happen to me. And I think it's just a much healthier perspective than waking up every day on accident, complaining about the world around me.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times it's that, I think everybody has been told, after a kid is like a pipe dream. I knew a lot of guys that when I started music, they're like, if they couldn't be like Jimmy Page, or they couldn't play like John Bonham, or they couldn't sing like, Robert Plant, and like oh, I can't do it. And I kind of told them like, well, what about the Clash? What about the Talking Heads? What about REM? Like, look at these bands with these guys like Michael Stipe. He doesn't have a perfect singing voice, but look how big REM got. Look at Joe Strummer from The Clash. He didn't have a perfect singing voice. And look at Bob Dylan. Bob
Mm,
Dylan broke through and made it about the words. not about the voice. He doesn't have a Frank Sinatra voice, doesn't have a Marvin Gaye voice, but he has a pen and a mindset and a storytelling point of view that changed music. They allowed singer-songwriters to say, "I can express myself without the perfect pitch. I can actually be considered to be an important artist without being having a perfect voice." And I think that's really important for people to understand that like perfection is like the enemy of creativity in some ways. Because if you didn't if you know a guy like Joe Stummer said, "Well, I don't have a perfect pitch, so I shouldn't even pick it up," you wouldn't have had the Clash. You wouldn't have Nirvana with Kurt Cobain. I mean, like we wouldn't have that because people, it wasn't perfect pitch. It wasn't like somebody else. It was him. It was like their unique self, and that's what's important.
Well, and I think it's our flaws, it's our weaknesses that make us unique, and it's actually what makes us authentic. And people might be impressed by my skills and my strength and your skills and your strengths, but it's actually our weaknesses and sometimes even our failures that draw people into. That's what makes us real. And a lot of times in life, we tell ourselves these stories about, we're not good enough for this, we don't have enough experience for this, we're too young, we're too old, we're too whatever. And we come up with this list of disqualifiers, but sometimes the very thing that we think disqualifies us is the very thing that has prepared us
Qualifies.
to do that work. And there's a quote, I don't know who originally said it, I heard it first from Ed Milet, but he says, God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And it's the idea of you usually making music. You make some mistakes, but you iterate from that, and you respond to that, and you build on that, and you learn from it. That's what this is. It's not, you don't start out perfect.
Yeah.
Um, and
I mean,
and I think it's
perfection.
our
Yeah.
very imperfections that make us real, and those experiences where we messed up, our regrets, those are the things that people can learn from. And I think there's a lot of value in the places of our life that we would sometimes rather keep hidden. Those are the pieces and parts that we need to show and be vulnerable, because that's how other people can really learn from our experiences.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many tools today where people get kind of guided into being perfect, a perfection mindset. So if you're, not using a typewriter and you're going into your word processor, you're using all these grammar tools and you spend all this time trying to get it perfect, versus there's a lot of writers that will just go onto a manual typewriter or into actual journal, and will just go at it in a flow state and then go back and fix it, right? Or have people help them fix it. But I think people get caught up, like in our industry, people get caught up in this thing called a digital audio workstation, which allows you to just put things on a grid and make it totally perfect. Take all the imperfections out of it. And what I find is it makes it very anesthetic, so perfect that I don't want to listen to it
It's
because
sterile.
I go back and I listen to something like Exile on Main Street from the Rolling Stones. I'm like, you can't do that in a DAW. You can't do that in a digital audio workstation. You can't do what Jagger and Richards did, because that is like real. That was like a real experience. That was like an honest experience. It was what they were feeling. And it's ramshackle. It's not following the meter. It is like micro timing errors all over it. The tonal errors all over it. But that's why it's beautiful. It's the imperfection of that record is its beauty. And there's a lot of stuff from the 60s and 70s that will kind of, show you that that's the case. If you actually listen to it, you can hear the mistakes in the recordings. If you go back and listen to a lot of stuff from the 60s and 70s, it's full of errors that today they wouldn't allow. And it's why
Mm.
it doesn't sound like that.
Yeah, and when you iron out the wrinkle, when you make something perfect, I think you remove the soul and spirit out of things sometimes. I was just thinking about this song, Benny Hill, "Stand by Me." I mean,
Mhm.
it's one of my favorite songs. There's some soul to it, there's meaning and energy and emotion behind it. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect song by any means, but that is one of my favorite songs of all time. And I think, to your point, I think people resonate with some imperfections because it gives something character. Otherwise, like I said, it's just sterile.
It's like why I do live podcasting because I started doing, when I first started, I tried to do like a scripted and I felt like an infomercial. And so, but
Mm,
this doesn't feel authentic to me because that's not how I do music. I'm more like like a jazz fusion guy. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do my podcast the way I do my music. I'm going to have it live. I'm going to have it kind of ramshackle. It's going to be what it is because it's authentic and it's honest. And I get to talk to people and actually pull it out of them when it's like, oh, no, we're not going to go back and stop and re edit because we know we're going to cut it up. Like, no, it's going to be what it is in the moment. And I think people appreciate the in the moment type of discussions because it feels real. It doesn't feel
feels
like it's
real.
like contrived. And I think there's a lot of people that are starting to realize, even business people are doing podcasting to connect with their customers and live sessions where the customers can actually talk to people and actually, ask somebody to demo something live to actually see what it does on a new product and then go hit a coupon code and, or link and then buy it. And because they actually got a demo live through the podcast. And that is like a revelation compared to something being a static infomercial. And then people are like, well, I don't know if that's real. I don't know if that, they feel more connected because they were able to ask a question and get an immediate result.
Mm. No, it makes total sense. And it's yeah, it builds connection. It builds more connection than, like you said, a prepackaged infomercial that just kind of it goes out there and it falls flat.
So, like in terms of like living a life of abundance, it seems like you just have to have this ability to kind of roll with the punches. I think
Yeah,
you have to be willing to try things, right?
you have to be willing to try things, and I think be more concerned about getting back up rather than worrying about not falling down. It's about overcoming setbacks. Dave Ramsey says that uh, everybody experiences failure. Successful people are just standing on top of a pile of failures instead of being buried underneath them. And and I think that's super true in life. It's true in investing. Um, your 401k isn't going to go up every day. It's not even going to go up every month or every year. We're in the middle of that right now. Some people listening thinking, yeah, my 401k feels like a 301k right now.
Like it's flat or
Um,
it's
yeah, you go backwards sometimes, and
yeah.
life is like climbing a mountain. It's rugged. There's valleys, there's storms, and sometimes you have to cross valleys before you can keep climbing. And if people have that mindset, I think they'll experience setbacks and difficulties better because they're not expecting everything to get better every single day. But there's a viewpoint that in the long run it will be better, but there'll be some trials and tribulations along the path.
It was always with that magic bullet, like if you look at Bitcoin, it's like it had this max value and then it dropped. And a lot of that crypto stuff it dropped. And people thought it was like the magic bullet. But there's nothing's ever the magic bullet. There's always like a
No.
peak and a valley to any kind of thing. And so people always want to say, "Oh, I got the magic thing. I got the magic algorithm." And then guess what? You were getting 10,000 views and then you drop down to 10. I guess that's not you have to iterate. You can't just stay on it. People want to be able to get something that's going to continually work. And then it's like, well, it's hard work. You got to iterate. You have to try other things because usually things get burned out or they eventually stop working. That's what I find in life. And it's like not that you give up, but you try different approaches.
Well, and this would apply to many different areas of life, but when it comes to success, there's no secret. There's just sacrifice. And people have to be willing to pay the price to get what they say they want.
Hmm. Well, thank you again for being on the show. I want to talk about your website again for people. Can we talk that at the beginning? The www.veritasalaska.com. If you could tell the audience again what happens if they click on that.
Yeah. So a couple things here. If people do have questions, they can check out the website. All our contact info is there. You can also email ask@veritasalaska.com, ask@veritasalaska.com. Or you can, if people are wondering how all this stuff that we talked about today, how does that apply to finances? How does that apply to goals and building wealth? Just shoot us an email or get on our website. You can schedule appointments actually right on the website. And I do have a book coming out where a lot of what we talked about today, Phantom, but
Oh, it's a great
specifically
book.
how it applies to finances and building financial freedom. So if people want to get early access to that, they can email, just put book in the subject line and email ask@veritasalaska.com, and we'll put them on a VIP list to get a special release of the book.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I think that's very important. So are you thinking about doing like master classes or anything like that in the future, or a book tour?
Yep, we will have some master classes coming up. I'm not sure what the book tour is going to entail. We're up here in Anchorage, Alaska, so
Yeah,
we have to start
maybe
it
a
in the lower
virtual
48.
book
It'd be a
tour.
really short tour up here, on a dog sled probably. But we'll be doing a lot of different things to promote the book, and it isn't just going to be about finances. The book is Forging Financial Freedom, but really it's about a
Mhm.
life of abundance, and that goes far beyond just finances.
Yeah, it's like you're looking at a holistic point of view, like the mind, body, soul, finances, like it's all part of your whole outlook. It's like multiple, like a pyramid or something, or multiple legs to anything. And that's why I think a lot of
Exactly.
people make the mistake. It's like one leg to something, and then all the other ones get weaker. You can put everything into one. You kind of have to look at the holistic picture of your life. And thank you again for being on the Family Electric Goes podcast. It's been really enlightening, and I think it's a really cool discussion. And I encourage people again to click on that URL. It will be fully clickable when we're published on all the platforms. We're on every major platform for podcasts where you want to listen or watch, and that will be available on those platforms tomorrow. But thank you again for being on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Phantom. Thank you so much for having me.